Hey guys, how's it going? It's Chris here. I just wanted to do a video talking about some of the mental changes that I've experienced since being on T. A lot of people talk about what the physical changes are, and I think that it's important to be able to talk about both because they go hand in hand, and I think it's good to be able to educate people who are going to be taking hormones of some of those mental changes, but also be able to maybe educate some people that aren't trans, just the general society really, about some of those experiences. So this is all just from my experience. This isn't what every guy experiences, but I'm just going to talk about how I felt about my mental changes since being on T. So for the first few months I was doing a diary like I said in my other video, and I was documenting the physical and mental changes. So first I'll go through some of the first few months of those experiences, and then I'll just talk a bit about an overview of some other more wider concepts of things that I've experienced, mental changes and things like that since being on T. So for the first month for me it was really just a relief of being on T. I felt like I was carrying a lot on my shoulders, which I didn't realise until I started T, that I was feeling down a lot of the time. I was feeling very emotional, very upset, a lot of it leading up to T, and I waited a fair chunk of my time before starting T. It was, I don't know, maybe a year and a half to 2 years or something that I waited. So that was pretty frustrating, trying to be patient for that amount of time. So when I first started T, it was just a real big relief that I was finally on it. I knew things were going forward. I knew everything was going to start to be better for me, and so I was stoked, like I was on a high just from that. I think that there was a lot more mental changes for me that went on, I guess, in the first month than physical because of that as well. And from that point I started to really open up my mind to thinking in a totally different way than what I was previously, which I'll speak about in a minute. So that's pretty much, for the first month it was just a relief. For the second month for me I started to feel less emotional. I had very heightened emotions before. I would cry really easily. I was very sensitive, get upset very easily, and because of those things I also got angry pretty easily. So for me, starting T, it really has leveled out those emotions, all of them, including the anger one. So I think because of the fact that I was feeling all those less extreme emotions, I have decreased in how much I feel like anger, because things just don't get to me like they used to now, which is great because a lot of people are concerned that if they do have heightened emotions or something like that, then they're going to get real bad anger issues. So it's not the experience for everyone, but it sure was, and it has been the experience for me. But in saying that, I think that I get pretty irritable, I guess, though sometimes. Like I said in other videos, especially if I'm really hungry, which I get, once I start getting hungry, I just get really hungry within 10 minutes. Like I feel like my stomach starts making noise within 10 minutes of just getting hungry. And so without food and without sleep, I am pretty bloody irritable. So, but taking those things out, like generally I'm in a pretty good mood, pretty positive, and yeah, I don't feel those emotions at all like I used to. I feel a lot more stable emotionally, which obviously makes a big difference on your mental way of thinking as well. So for the second month, there was that emotion change for me, emotion control more for me, and also I started to realise a lot more about stepping outside the black and white markers of gender. So for me, I started looking at other guys' YouTube videos who would talk about having there being a difference between having a physical need to identify as male compared to an emotional need to identify, as a particular gender. So some guys that I've watched videos, and this is how I feel, I physically feel that I identify only as male, only have, always will, can't see anything otherwise. I've tried to act and dress like a girl and stuff previously, and it would make me very emotional. I'd be very upset, and I didn't understand why I was constantly trying to do that to myself, or I didn't understand why I had such a problem with putting on these clothes in the first place. Obviously it makes a lot more sense now, but I didn't know that from a young age. And I guess maybe that was linked into because of the other side of it is emotionally, I don't feel like I am that macho type. I like drinking beer, I like cars, I like I like a lot of things that's male orientated, but when it comes to emotions and stuff, I'm really different in that way. So, I mean, I've got a background in a degree in psychology, and my interest is working with people. So, that isn't the typical stereotype male role. Although I physically may look like it, my emotions don't always match that. So, I was also socialized as a female for like the first 24 years of my life before taking tea. So, I think that it's important to not ignore those experiences as well. Um, and I was raised by all females, which I guess probably made a pretty big difference in that as well. So for me, yeah, the second month was really realizing that you've got a gender spectrum like there is with sexuality, and you've got, male, female, and in the middle, genderqueer, people who identify as both genders or neither gender. And for me, I realized that I am in between that spectrum of genderqueer and male. Never in any which way do I identify, even emotionally, as the female side. But you know, some days I feel like I'm closer to the genderqueer marker, and other days I feel like I'm like right near the black and white stereotypical male. So it changes, like I think day to day it sort of can change, but generally it is within that spectrum of where I feel like I lie. And that was something that was very difficult for me to even understand or open my eyes up to. I was very black and white previously. I would have said that I wasn't, but looking back, I think that I was. I felt I felt like a lot of different emotions pre-tea, being very upset about starting tea because I felt like if I don't feel like I'm female, then therefore I'm male. And, some days that would really do my head in because I was like, well, I think I'm lying to myself. I don't think that I am this black and white picture of a male. So yeah, it was really once I started to open up my mind and see that it isn't always black and white. And I think it's important to educate people about that everywhere within the trans community as well, within the GLBTIQ community, and within society, because it's not black and white. Some people it is definitely, but it's not for a lot as well. So it's important to be able to educate others about that. So yeah, that for me was the biggest mental change of opening my eyes. Second month on tea. And in the third month, I started to become less dysphoric. I started passing a little bit better and things like that. So that changed my way of thinking. I became less likely to try and act out a male role just so I could pass a lot better. I think once you start physically changing, you can actually sort of take a bit of a breather on yourself and just go, okay, I don't have to act so much like this and that to be able to pass. I can just start to be me. And I think a lot of guys feel that. I think it's really normal to feel that, but it's great to be able to not feel like you have to actually be part of that particular role. So that was pretty much the things that I documented in the diary. Some of the other things I just wanted to talk about was the female anxiety as well that has shifted for me. So I think that a lot of women get this female anxiety, whether it's related to the monthly or not, I'm not sure, but once you start the hormones, I feel like I got this from another guy who said this to me, and I didn't really understand pre-T what he meant by female anxiety, but I think I get it now. And I just don't really feel it anymore. I think that's because probably a lot of women with the estrogen are more, um, they're able to pick up emotional cues, social cues, all that sort of thing, and yeah, a little bit more in tune. So maybe that's what creates that female anxiety. I'm not sure, but for me, it's shifted. I don't have that anymore, which is great. So another thing I wanted to talk about was the participation in the LGBTIQ community. Um, there's a lot to say about this, so I can only really briefly go over it. But I think that being part of the lesbian community for me for many years was really hard to then jump into this transition. I felt like, I had a couple of comments said to me. It was mainly from the older generation of the queer lesbian community who felt like I was betraying, the lesbian community by jumping on the other side of that fence and becoming a male. I felt like they were my family. You know, I don't have strong connections with my family. I don't have those supports in place, which in one way was good because I didn't really have any issues with getting rejected, I guess, from family members because of being trans, because they're not really there in the first place, not strong connections anyway. So in saying that, like, being part of the LGBTI community was really important to me, and having some of these comments said really hurt me because I felt like they were my family in a lot of ways. So I sort of stood away from the community and felt quite angry and hurt, and have realised lately, you know, that it's in the last couple of months of getting back into that, fighting again for those rights, because I think that we need to, as minority groups, stick together in that community and try and work as a group to be able to try and challenge society. We have different needs, absolutely. We have very different situations, but we are all minority groups, and I think that we do still have a lot in common, so I think it's important to still work together as a team, and the more that people can work together as a team, the more likely we are to be able to try and shift society's views on things. So that's my opinion on that. There's a couple of other things I want to talk about, but I'm really aware of what the time is, so I'll just quickly go over them. The dysphoria for me has changed. Obviously, the more physically male that I've become, I'm a lot less dysphoric. I have a lot more self-confidence. I was very... I had a lot of issues with self-confidence pre-T because of this stuff. Constantly watching what I was saying and doing. It was a real hassle. So, yeah, just to be able to try and pass like a male, like I was saying. So, since becoming physically, having more of that male physique, I feel emotionally and mentally a lot stronger, more positive, and I don't surround people in my life now that are not willing to go beyond that black and white way of thinking. If they can't understand the ins and outs, even when it's explained to them about transitioning and how trans people feel, I'm not interested in having those people in my life, because I want people that are supportive, loving and caring, and who give a shit about the bigger picture in this world. So that's how I feel about that stuff, and I think that it's important to have those supports around you who do agree, who are supportive of you as well. Like, you can't choose your family members, and you know, so sometimes you're in a position where you've just got to try and battle through some of that stuff, and that's fine. But the people that you do have a choice about in your life, you know, make sure that you make the right decisions. Make sure that you do surround yourself with people that are positive and good people, you know, because I think that the sort of people you can hang around is often the sort of person you become. So I think that's just important to keep that stuff in mind. So for me, yeah, the biggest problem, I think, with first starting the transition was self-acceptance. I have had a really big struggle in accepting that I'm trans, huge struggle. And I think that a lot of that was because I was trying to black and white box myself into something. So since not doing that, I've had a lot more self-acceptance with myself. And the confidence slowly builds, and things just get better and better as you start the transition. So yeah, I just wanted to touch base about that, because self-acceptance is really important, and I think we need to try and make sure that we can do whatever we can to build our confidence and to have that self-acceptance within ourselves, because if we can't have that, other people won't. So yeah, it's important to have those supports in place to also have that happen, and without a couple of friends of mine, I definitely wouldn't have the confidence and self-acceptance at the point where I'm at now to be able to say this stuff either. So yeah, I think that that's all I really wanted to just touch base on in that sort of stuff. Yeah, look, transitioning does get easier, I think, as you go along. But yeah, it's important to notice those mental changes, and hopefully I'll be able to upload a few more videos, get a couple of discussions happening about some of the different concepts and stuff that go through your mind once you start to live as a trans person in society. It's pretty interesting stuff, and I like talking about this sort of thing as well. So if you guys have any questions, or if you just want to leave any comments, whatever, feel free. Otherwise, we'll speak with you guys soon. All right, catch you later. Bye.